Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the second series of Kokoon. And on this episode, we're so lucky to have Kern because he's coming all the way from Belgium. Good morning to you, Kern. And Kern's also, he's the founder of Health Scouts and the CEO of Epic. The author of Epic, which is an amazing new book that's just been released. So welcome, Kern. How are you?
Wow, thank you, Karen, for having me. That's a first ever, really unique opportunity. So I'm looking forward to meet you and your audience today.
Thank you so much. Now, I always like to start at the beginning with our guests. So tell me, how did your journey into the health and wellness sort of industry come about? Where did you start and what led you to this point in time?
So I'm trained as a biomedic, and I started my career seeing cancer patients. With a fantastic team, discovered the reason why some people get certain types of cancer. And then with a fantastic team, was able to develop a medication to treat brain cancer in children. Now, more confronting than a child 6-year-old with brain cancer, it will probably never get. And the first thing and the best thing we could do with these children was send them on a camp. And that camp was called Camp Delight. And that was the first turning moment in my life. The use of delight in healthcare. But it changed completely when I went for the first time to the west of China and discovered a very old healthcare model, more than 2,000 years old, where at that time the doctor got paid as long as people in the village remained healthy. And once you got sick, you no longer had to pay. And that became my obsession. Rather than trying to cure a number of cancer patients, I made it my life goal, even trying to understand why we lost the Chinese system and trying to rebuild it. And so all the things I do in the longevity, wellness, health industry are tailored to provide all of us a digital doctor, a digital twin, I'm going to call it, which is 24/7 with us and guides us to not just stay healthy, but to find our potential and to find our purpose. And I guess these are the topics we're going to discuss today.
Absolutely. And so tell me more about your book, Epic. Are these the sorts of themes and concepts that you explore in Epic?
Yeah, so I wrote my first book 12 years ago, which was called Sick No More. And Sick No More was the roadmap trying to understand why digital technology and AI at that time already was going to help us out in becoming a better doctor. And the big dream was not to live forever, but the big dream is to die young, but as late as possible. That is what we want to sign up. The day before I die, I still want to be healthy. Now, the reason, Karen, why we get sick in the first place, that's what I described in the first book, is because as a doctor or as a wellness practitioner, we know almost nothing of our patients. And let me try to illustrate that. If I send a package from where I live in Brussels to Barcelona to whatever, to Sydney, I can trace my package every 5 minutes, which I find normal. But my average patient, my cancer patient, my diabetic patient, my cardiovascular patient is 8,700 hours a year by himself or herself, not linked to me as a healthcare provider. So a FedEx package is better off than my patient, and that is not normal. And that is what technology is going to do. We're going to, and I'm going to show you a lot of examples in the next half an hour, we're going to enter into the real world, into the real life of our patient using digital, using AI, and we're going to be there not just when he or she gets sick, we're going to be there to predict things from striking and to prevent them from happening. And so for that reason, I went through 3 phases. First, describing what we're going to do using digital, using genomics, using genetics to discover. The second book, Your Guide to Delight, described how hard it was to change healthcare. Because healthcare makes money from we being sick, right? And all of a sudden, there was a crazy guy who came to tell that we were going to pay for staying healthy. That I was mentioning to hospitals that they were kind of failures because I wanted to see a hospital where I could go to find out what longevity training was, to find out what wellness really was about, to find out how I prevent getting sick. There was not such a hospital, something like
Mm.
5 years ago. And so my second book, Karen, described delight thinking. And delight thinking is fascinating. It's basically a way to change a system from a white page, which is what we need in healthcare. And so delight thinking creates experiences close to magic, but real, based on things people didn't realize they didn't realize, based on unknown unknowns. And the
Mm.
reason why this works is the following. If I give you a present for your birthday, which is on your bucket list, you're happy, right? But if I give you something you didn't expect to get, you're super happy. That is delight. So I went to doctors, I went to hospitals, I went to governments, showing them novel tech, amongst them AI tools, which they didn't realize even existed. And all of a sudden, I told them that, for instance, listening to my voice, I was able to identify people with Parkinson's more than 3 years before the doctor could identify them with a tremor. Because people
Wow.
with Parkinson's, they start to pronounce their vowels differently because the tone of their muscle is changing. And if I
Mm.
detect them 3 years in advance, I can treat them and they don't evolve becoming sick. That
Yeah.
was a kind of smashing finding. And I can give you 100 of these examples where
Yeah.
technology predicts, prevents, and keeps me healthy till the end of time. So the second
Mm.
book was Delight Thinking. And then the third one, which is just out since 2 or 3 weeks, Epic, is the learnings I went through trying to sell prevention. Because at the end, if you want to stay healthy as long as possible, which is also the dream of a longevity clinic, of a wellness practitioner, well, now we have to be able to sell prevention. But in all
Mm.
reality, prevention is not an easy sell. It's not sexy. It's something, well, far out. Why should I start doing things now if I'm only getting old in 50 years from now? Three, and crazy, I cannot prescribe prevention to a patient. There is a code for every disease, for every kind of injury you can imagine, but I cannot prescribe prevention. And there's a number of these reasons. So I started to think maybe instead of trying to keep people healthy, how cool would it be that we can discover using AI what people are really good at? And trust me, a lot of people don't have a clue what they're really good at. And if
Mm.
you discover what really is what makes you tick, then it gives you purpose. And potential and purpose are basically interplays. Eh? People with purpose, well, they find out what they're good at, and vice versa. So I started to think about reframing the story and not telling me, Koen, you have to walk more, you have to do less of this, more of that, but to find out what is Koen's dream. And imagine that my dream would be to climb the Kilimanjaro with my grandchildren, then knowing that I don't even have grandchildren yet, you have to keep me healthy till then. But that's way more aspirational than simply saying you have to do 10,000 steps a day. And so Epic describes how the latest in tech, in digital tools and AI, the latest in longevity science, and the latest in art and creativity, believe me, I'll come back to that, combined will allow us to reach the best of who we are and helps us the day before we die to still be healthy and to find and to feel that we have mattered on the planet, that we have left legacy, and not just for ourselves, but for others. And that's,
Mm.
I think, what it is really, what it is to be human. That is to get experiences where others benefited from themselves as well. And that gives you the feeling that you lived your life to the fullest.
I've lived an epic life,
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah. And so, for instance, beyond tools to keep me healthy, and I guess we might come back to a few of these things in a second. One of the tools I describe is a fascinating one you readers can start to use in 50 minutes as well. It's called Wanderer.space. And Wanderer asks you, well, what are your hobbies? What are your interests? And links them to your LinkedIn profile. And all of a sudden suggests a kind of a job, which in my case I have never heard of, a kind of a job which might be fitting to who you are. And it tells you why it makes sense, what you could make with it, how to enter in that world. And I've shown that to a few people already. And every single time it is so spot on that people say, well,
Wow.
I seem to have missed an opportunity, or you have unlocked a new opportunity. And that is why I was super happy to be on your show, trying to show how in Epic I'm unlocking hundreds of possibilities for people to basically live the dream of, well, getting the max out of their life.
I love that. And it also links to your second book around that delight, of
Absolutely.
getting that surprise that you weren't expecting.
Yes. Yeah. And there's something fascinating. A few years ago, a festival started in Cardiff in Wales, and that was called Before I Die. And
Ah,
people were asked, what do you want to do before you die? Three things always. I want to leave legacy. I want to have a child, a company, a patent, an ID, a book. That's the legacy part. That's logical. Second, people do not want to die alone. You want to belong. By the way, loneliness is one of the biggest epidemics coming to us. It's not diabetes any longer, it's being lonely. Also for children 20 years old. So loneliness is something you want to avoid for sure. And the third thing, again, fascinating. The majority of people are pretty happy with the life they lived, but the majority of people regret the experiences they haven't had. And that is what Epic tries to describe. How can we provide, even if I'm disabled, even if I don't have basically Musk powers, that's not what it's about, but how can I discover the experiences which make me tick and which make me feel that I have helped others to strive. And that is what's the best you can leave before you die.
absolutely. I love that. Um, I wanted to ask you, because you were talking about some of the things that you do to stay well and
Mhm.
live a long life. How do you maintain your energy levels? Because you're clearly a very busy man. You are the founder and CEO of Health Scouts. You're writing books at a prolific rate. So you've done your third now, is that right? And you'll probably
Yeah,
be on your next. So what do you do?
yeah.
How do you stay
That's an
healthy?
interesting one. The first time someone asked, there's two things. I'm born curious, which I think is a magical feature to have. But curiosity makes that every single day something like a fascinating one. Every day I do things which fail completely, but every day I discover things I didn't realize I would love. I can. You don't want to sit next to me in the car because I've seen every advertisement on the street. But it's inspiring. So that's the first thing I do. I turned curiosity in learning in a sense. And the second thing, and that's my big thing, I like the arts, and I like talking, being amongst artists, and trying to understand how they create from a white page. And for me, that gives my energy, and that keeps me thriving and well. And so, incidentally, one of the things I describe in the book is something which first started to happen in a hospital in Montreal, in Canada, where the first doctor once prescribed a visit to the museum instead of pills for someone with a mental issue. And
Yeah.
so in my country now, we start to do that as well in the first hospitals. But think about it. So you leave the doctor, and basically the doctor or the system pays you the entrance into the hospital. What a new way of thinking that is, right? And so
Mhm.
at some point in time, then I'm a tech guy. People sometimes call me Mr. Digital Health. We have been experimenting with the following. So it's pretty easy now to provide people a digital environment on a glass, on a VR glass, or on a Ray-Ban or a Meta glass, or even on a
Mm.
TV, which they have
Yeah.
designed. And so I can ask a patient, where would you like to be? In a sports stadium, on the beach in Brisbane, or let's say in a museum. And so, for instance, I can take a patient into a museum, and at every single wall, you have pieces of art, paintings, whatever. And so at some point in time, I was standing with a patient in front of a big painting, and from the ceiling, you had thousands of letters and numbers peeling down like rain. And only in the middle, there was an umbrella. And under the umbrella, there was no rain, no letters, no numbers, and there it was clean. And my patient said, well, whoa, that's how I every day feel in the morning, overwhelmed by what I need to do, by WhatsApps with SMSs, by all these things. That's way too much. But if I could stand under the umbrella a few minutes a day, that gives me the rest I need. And so we downloaded that painting on his smartphone. Now he watches that painting a few seconds a day, and all of a sudden he used technology to discover what gives him the rest and keeps him well. I find that
Mm.
fascinating. Yeah? So
Yeah.
it's using tech and art to make a switch in someone's mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, I love that. And
And sure, go ahead.
no, no, please continue.
Yeah. And so what I think is finally changing in healthcare, and that goes back to your question, what do you do to maintain energy and wellness? So in the past, healthcare has focused big time on physical health. 90% is still physical health people look at. 10%
Yeah.
they start to consider mental health. But if we look to where we really come from, health is way more holistic. And I know for a lot of people, holistic doesn't sound well, super kind of profound, it's too fluffy. But holistic health means, or positive health is maybe for that matter, is also involving emotional health and even spiritual health in the big picture and financial health. For instance, being unsure that I'm able to pay my pension gives me so much uncertainty that that makes me sick. So financial
Mm.
health is part of the big picture. But that aside, the fact that looking to things like emotion is something where we can tap into also makes that, for instance, if I told a patient, or I have to look to myself, if you would have said to me, Koen, try to breathe 8 times in and out, because if you're able to do that, you're better in sleeping and you will get a little bit more mindful. Well, after 3 times, Karen, I was forgetting that I had to breathe 8 times. So now I have a digital tool. It's called Moonbird. And
Yeah.
Moonbird is kind of a hand vibrator, I call it, which basically expands and shows me the 8 seconds I have to breathe in. And basically
Okay.
it collapses, and that's the time I have to breathe out.
Yeah.
The entire session, I keep that in my hand. And after 3 weeks, I had finally captured how I had to do 8 times breathing in and breathing out. And so all of a sudden, technology enables doing things in a different fashion. Yeah? The same with diets. In the past, I mean, I'm trained to understand all these things, but even for me, the distinction between a sandwich, a white sandwich, and a brown sandwich, or between a brown sandwich and granola, was something like, sure, I understand it's different, but so what in a sense? Still, I started to use a patch on my arm, which is now a consumer patch. Basically, you can get in a normal pharmacy. It's called Freestyle. And that little patch sticks in my arm for 2 weeks and measures in a continuous fashion my sugar level, my glucose. And so
Yeah.
at the time when I eat something, 5 minutes later, I can see on my smartphone the impact of what I eat on basically my body. And that was really in my face because it started to realize what ketchup really does. It's the biggest sugar bomb you have in your fridge.
Yeah. Wow.
Kind of a mind opener that by seeing it, I believe it, and that helped me to change things in my diet. And
Mm.
that's what I find fascinating because the entire spectrum. of things which can be measured. Let's start with the contents of your fridge. I can give you a little app. It's called Healthy Chef, which makes a picture of the inside of your fridge. And based on that picture, the app suggests you a number of menus and plates you can make with the ingredients of your fridge. I don't have to think. The AI does that for me
Mm.
and gives me a tool to maximize the chance to stay
Yeah.
healthier longer. And that is a little bit my space. So with my team, we watch all across the world to novel tech and digital health tools, AI tools, but also behavior changing tools, nudging tools, which together we can provide not just to patients, but to citizens, which help
Mm.
them to use in their daily life to change little things in behavior, not like I need to, but like experiences which makes it feel that they have the power themselves to do the things to live the longest possible healthy life. And these things we offer in keynote speeches, in workshops, in books, traveling across the world. That's what I basically do, is
Yeah.
inspiring people that the things are out there to change, that the things are out there you didn't realize, and that they help you to become well, to live the long life, and that you can start doing these things not in a few weeks from now, but in 25 minutes from now.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think a lot of people don't know that these things exist because there is just so many tools. And
Yeah.
now I mean, you've been writing about AI for, more than a decade. And now, how are you feeling about it? It seems to be ramping up and getting faster and faster in terms of its evolution. How are you feeling about that? And what do you say to people who are fearful of that, the rapid change that's happening and the way that technology is evolving?
Yeah, I think I'm trained with I used AI all 30 years ago. We didn't call it AI.
Mm.
We called it statistics, and now it's statistics
Yeah.
on steroids. But I realized that for a lot of people, this entire wave of AI, and not just the Gen AI like the Chat GPTs or the Deep Seeks, are basically like exciting. Let me explore, but I don't have the time to explore all these new things. They start to become pretty overwhelming, and a lot of people start to become a little bit fearful that their
Mm.
job might change, right? And I cannot even imagine a job which is not going to change. So I think there is reason to, well, find ways to make this digestible. Now, incidentally, because I'm a keynote speaker, the questions I very often get from my audience, for instance, a pharma company, for instance, a room of lay people, is can you please destigmatize and demystify? These are the two words people use. Destigmatize and demystify the use of AI in healthcare. What I often start to do is the following. I ask people, who is your favorite pop star? And then people say, well, it's Eminem or it's Taylor Swift, whatever. And I explain them something in the style of Eminem. So I asked ChatGPT, write me a rap song explaining which disease Koon has or why he has to take some medication in the style of Eminem. And I get a rap song in 7 seconds.
I'm
And
good.
then, and then I upload that rap song in a second tool called Suno AI, SUNO.ai. And
Yeah.
Suno converts that rap song into a real Eminem song. And I sent my patient home, or my citizen who wants to learn something novel, home with 10 songs never written before, uniquely tailored to him or her with the use of AI. And that's not because of the gimmick, but that helps people to say, well, wow, I can use AI to personalize something. And so,
Mm.
to answer your question, Karen, what I think people should try to do is start playing with a few of these AI tools. And one of the fascinating things to play with, for instance, is to ask, well, where will I be based on the things your AI tool knows about me? Where may I be in 5 years from now? or vice versa. If you project yourself where you would love to be in, let's say 5 or 10 years from now, what you can ask these tools, what should I do
Yeah,
to reach
reverse
that
engineering.
goal? Yeah, it's kind of reversing the model. And
Yeah.
incidentally, people write books on that, and I'm blanking on the name. I'm going to check it up for a second. But there has been a book, I think it's a year and a half ago, which was exactly helping people doing that. The book was called Your Future Self, and it was helping people to see with AI who they could become. And that is the first thing which I advise to people. If you start playing, apply it to yourself, right?
Mm.
But then, if I look back the last 10 years and trying to reply to your question, how is AI being adopted? One of the things we do in our team is we curate the database of every certified health app and AI tool on the planet. That's not a big database. That database contains 320 tools. Half of them,
Mm.
I guess, will be available in Australia. Half of them is for physicians, half of them is for you as a citizen. Now, everybody who looks into the list finds at least one or two tools which he or she might say, well, it's me. So, for instance, there is AI tools which scan my face and look to my skin profile and suggest things. One of the tools looks or makes a video selfie. And that video selfie, Karen, looks, for instance, to the bloodstream in my cheeks. My eyes cannot see
Yeah.
it, but the AI tool
Yeah.
does. And so the way my blood streams to my cheeks is a measurement from my heart rate and from my blood pressure, logical.
Mm.
But there is something fascinating now. People who become diabetic, they start to get too much sugar in the blood, right? And if you have more sugar in the blood, your blood is more viscous and your heart needs to beat harder. And so
Mm.
people who have developed diabetes, they have a little bit changing bloodstream in cheeks, and my video selfie can detect that. So in our next Zoom call or next Teams call, my tool could ask, Karen, can I screen you for developing diabetes? So you might say no, but I think you might also say yes if I tell you that I can next give you a number of nudging tools to do something different with exercise, with sleep, with mindfulness, with food, which will not further develop your diabetes, but keep you healthy. And all of
Mm.
a sudden, a video selfie, an AI tool, prevents me from getting diabetes, right? And that's my space. Hundreds of these tools, which altogether will help us to die young, but as late as possible. And the big challenge is not the technology, it's one, creating awareness, and two, finding out what people are willing to share, how much data
Mm.
people feel okay to deal with
Yeah.
in a private manner, in an ethical manner, in a profound manner. And if I may give you one example of what is feasible, and that's a real wellness example, I think. I sequenced myself. I perfectly know every single digit of the 3 billion digits which define who I am. It's my genome, my DNA, my genetic profile. That's my job. And so, more than 11 years ago, I discovered that I was predisposed to get blind.
Mm.
Now, that's the only thing I don't want to encounter blindness. I mean, losing my legs, not nice, but I can live with that, I guess. But losing my eyes, that's the worst which could happen for me. But since I know this, Karen, I got superpowers because I started to take one supplement which delays the degradation of the back of my eyes. And I
Yeah.
started to use an AI tool, not kidding, which is able to scan the back of my eye, sees the small blood vessels in my retina, and if something started to come there, I can still be treated. If I would not have known this, I will turn blind and it's game over. So I
Wow.
used one AI tool, changed one thing in my lifestyle, my diet, changed one thing using tech, and now I feel
Mm.
I have the superpowers that I'm beating my blindness. And that is a little bit what I dream of. That's in the years I will have left on this planet, I can travel as lots as much as possible the world, to show people what is out there, to show people how they can start using things themselves, and how healthcare systems can adopt this, so that healthcare systems, governments, hospitals also have a way not to kind of not be able to afford social care any longer because we get too old, too sick, and we lose all our people, we burn out, but that we spend our money in making sure that the day before you die, our people are still healthy. And the cost that takes is 10 times smaller than the cost it takes to let me die with sickness.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? That just that preventative stuff would have such an impact. But I guess, yeah, as you were saying, there's, I think there's not as much money in it for the people who want to make money out of people's illnesses.
It's changing. So incidentally, I've involved now with 3 clinics in Europe, 3 different countries, which came to us with the question, can we build part, can we make a facility within the clinic where people pay even out of pocket to learn what they should do to remain healthy. So it's changing, really. So
Yeah.
10 years ago, it was science fiction. It's happening now.
Yeah.
The fact that it's started in the US, it came to the Middle East, it's coming to Europe as well now. The wave of longevity clinics, huge amount. The guy from Spotify founded Nico, a screening clinic in Stockholm, London, where I enter a full body scan and advice to prevent things from doing. Companies in the US like Function Health, Superpower, Health Turnouts, which basically offer me some biomarker analysis and some advice. But what I really think we need is 24/7 coaching and guidance. And so what inspires me big time in the wellness longevity space is a movie, a Disney movie, which was called Big Hero 6, which I advise your people to watch again. And Big Hero 6 is about 5 friends which get to know a sixth, marshmallow, inflatable Dr. Baymax, who lives in my home in a small tiny box. And now and then pops out, comes to me and asks, Koen, how are you? And basically communicating with emoticons on his belly, he finds out that I'm suffering, that I'm mentally, that there is an issue, or that I have pain. And he's there to teach me, to coach me, to prevent things. And that idea, Baymax in Big Hero 6, that is, I think, what AI is really going to do. We're going to be able, pretty soon now, first prototypes are out, Karen, to provide all of us a avatar, a digital twin, which knows who we are, gets our genetic profile, gets our social determinants of health, gets our Fitbit data, gets our whatever heart rate, combines it, and allows me to talk to my data, just like I use ChatGPT to talk to the internet. I now talk to my data and say, well, based on these data, I've been drinking a Coke, fine. What can I do to compensate that sugar drink? Well, go out, talk with 2 people, and in a holistic fashion, that's the same as drinking sugar. And therefore, and I think we have to keep mindful for the time, what I also like to do is watch a little series on Netflix called Live to 100.
Oh, yes.
Live to 100 discusses 5 regions on the planet called blue zones, where people naturally tend to get old without going to hospitals, without going to care centers. They do 9 things in common. It's part of Costa Rica, part of California, Okinawa in Japan, part of Sardinia in Italy, and part of Greece. And so, for instance, while in my country or in the majority of Europe, we are trained to finish our plate, take one extra step, they stop when they're 80% full. They stop eating time. Super small thing.
Yeah.
They drink wine as well, but never alone. They drink wine together. The social bonding is important. And so sometimes we have indeed part of the pendulum which goes into use a lot of tech and predict things, but you have the other pendulum which says, well, do basic things. Use your smart thinking. The tech is nice to have. It empowers, it enables, but doing really basic things like taking a walk in the forest is also helpful. And
Mm.
sometimes what I say to people, if you really want to stay healthy, try to do 20 minutes of walking a day. And if you're really busy, do 40 minutes. And then you see people think, well, you seem to be counter. I mean, this doesn't make sense what you're saying. Huh? If I'm busy, I have to do more. But then people start to get it. It's the 40 minutes walk which reset me, which give me kind of the rest that by the time I come back, it's okay. And so these are, in times of AI, in times of digital, still the easiest thing we can do to tell people, take that 20-minute walk, recalibrate, and life goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you talked about raising awareness. And so a way that a lot of people raise awareness about what their mission is using social media. So how are you with social media? I always ask this question because it can just take a lot of time and effort and attention away from what you're trying to do. While it's great, it can also have negative impact. So how do you use social media in a way that doesn't have those negative impacts?
Yeah.
What is your approach?
So the weirdest thing I've ever done is, as Mr. Digital, I never had a Facebook account. Not kidding. I had never a Facebook account, a Meta account. So mentally, I had some experiment in my head. Can I live on this planet without having a social media account? So that was before Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn was even out. So that's first. I don't have a Facebook account. But I use LinkedIn. That's my professional way to interact with the world. And what I do, I don't have notifications on. So that's the easiest I can suggest to people. But even if you use Instagram or TikTok or whatever, but try to switch off notifications because these are the killers. You cannot, as a human being, not look to your first screen when the red kind of small box is boom, pinging. And that's a small, tiny thing, but that helps big time. I guess your readers or your audience knows all the tricks where you can block the minutes or the amount of time you use whatever tool. And so really it blanks when you have reached the 50 minutes you could be on Facebook, on Meta, whatever, or the 25 minutes you could be on Instagram. So these tricks are out there. But what I basically suggest to people, try to put notifications off. That's one. Second, if you go to a restaurant, I think every restaurant or cafe should forbid to use smartphones. I don't want to see a table with a family of four where people watch smartphones. And so one of the things I'm really interested in is the tricks people use to avoid having to use a smartphone. And I'm going to give you a few. Fantastic Holland, a Dutch designer, makes tablecloths. And in the tableclothing is a small pocket. And so when I go to the restaurant, I have first to put my smartphone in the pockets, and only then I get the menu. I have pepper mills now, and the pepper mill can be used, and it quenches the signal of the smartphones around the table. So I'm obliged to use it. There is plenty of these tricks out. And you see governments picking up. So in Spain and Europe, the government has now decided that kids till 18 years, they can still use a smartphone, but in school, no more social media. And I think these will be tricks people will start to adopt all across the planet, because you would be surprised how many people feel lonely because of their use social media. They feel like they're the outliers. And these are the things, sometimes disadvantages of being into tech, because you can also use it vice versa. I'm going to give you one example. You know Instagram, right? We have data from Instagram where people who are using an orange or a reddish filter today, Within a month, switch to use of more bluish or gray filters, and 2 months later are depressed. Not kidding. But it's not
Wow.
surprising because orange and red are happiness, right?
Yeah.
And if I start using red and orange, and I start using blue and gray are cold colors. Look to all announcements about tech, about AI, that's blue, cold. And so that's one data point. But if I can combine the data point, use of color on social media, together with the number of typing errors on my smartphone, with how I use my voice, my intonation, then all of a sudden I have three data points, which might be an indicator that in 1 month from now you're facing a burnout. And so I want still to use these data points to prevent disease from striking. So I'm not against using social media. No, I'm absolutely pro using the power of social media, but simply helping people with the number of tricks to click their minds and to feel empowered that an hour or a few hours a day you can perfectly live without it and the world still keeps on running.
Great advice and great examples. And I wanted to ask you too, in your career, do you have a story of an inspirational breakthrough of one of your clients or patients that you've worked with, while keeping them anonymous, of course?
Yeah, what I mind, but oh, there's a few. What I always find
Yeah.
fascinating if I'm sitting in an audience, for instance, in a workshop, and I start telling, each time again, you have people which are sitting back and saying, well, Mr. Cass, this is not what we're going to do. This is against the use of data. This is against this. This is Orwell. This is not going to happen. No, 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 no. And helping and seeing throughout the day, Karen, that someone who is a strong no sayer becomes a believer and at the end says, wow, yes, let's do that. That's the most empowering thing there is because they become your biggest ambassador. And so one of the really nice examples was recently in a clinic where we said we were invited to talk about innovation in healthcare, and the management was there, and one of their doctors after 2 minutes for his stand-up I said, well, I don't see why you're here, because a few weeks ago I asked the management, which was in the room, for two VR glasses, and that was even too expensive. Why on earth should you believe that spending a day with you will help changing that? So I said, well, okay, point well taken. um, Give me 15 minutes to try to adopt to that comment, and I took them through the day. And at the end, on one hand, it was management who said, well, we were wrong. We haven't seen what we should have seen. But it was also the other guy who said, well, sure, the way I defend something, the way I bring something is not just I need this, give me money. No, you have to sell me what's in for me. And
Mm.
what I learned biggest time, Karen, and that's the answer to your question, that is that if you do something novel, top down almost always fails. It needs to be bottom up. But the
Yeah.
majority of people think, well, I work with a client or I work with an end user and he has to become the payer. But my biggest learning is that if you open up the world and instead of thinking two parties, you think three parties, you can all of a sudden involve a third party, which becomes so vested in your new ID that they take care for the ID, which was a no initially, and they move the world forward. And I'm going to make it concrete now. Instead of being treated as a diabetic patient, we suggested at some point in time in a hospital, well, learn me what I should do with regard to diet, to sleep, to mindfulness, to deal with my disease. And we suggested to build a cooking aisle in the hospital. Now, a cooking aisle in the hospital was like, why should we do that? That's not our task. It's too expensive. It will never fly. And we don't have money for that. So what I did, I went to a kitchen builder, a famous one in Belgium. And I said, well, if you would offer a free kitchen to a hospital. I went to a retailer and said, well, if you, as a classical retailer, would have a small affiliate in the hospital and you sell healthy foods. And I went to a number of cooks and I said, if you come and learn healthy cooking in the hospital and we make a TV show out of this, then we have potentially a win-win-win, right? And we did that. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, the hospital basically is teaching people now on a regular basis how to cook healthy. We
Yeah.
make sure that people who never cooked healthy and even thought, well, I cannot do that, I hate that, that the plate they make is sold via a network of um, two companies which bring healthy food to corporates, to companies, and they make some money from what they learn. And there was a TV show around that, and all of a sudden the hospital became a healthy hospital and turned an idea, which was a no at 9 o'clock, into let's do that at 5 o'clock. And that's
Yeah.
super rewarding. Yeah.
That's a great story, and it's a good example of where maybe other hospitals could actually follow as well.
Yeah.
Now we're nearly halfway through 2025, and so I like to ask about goals. There seems to be two different camps when it comes to goals. Some people are like, look, I'll just see how the year unfolds, where others are very strict about their goals and very disciplined. Where do you fall? Are you a goal setter? And if so, are you on track to meeting your goals for this year?
Yeah. Well, I have a number of dreams. I want to be on a number of stages across the planet. I've never been to Australia, by the way. So if someone in the audience
Yeah.
says, "Well, this is a story which could make sense on a stage," you are happy to reach out. No, but one of the things I'm dreaming of is a Netflix series, and not about me. Yeah, but not about me myself per se, but about guiding people, just like the guy with the blue zones did, and show people this does exist on the planet. Is I would like to take people to best practices, show what is happening right now, and bring these things together as an inspiration. And let me give you one example. In Singapore, for instance, people get a watch, and every day you live healthy, you get 2 real Singaporean dollars, monetary
Oh,
rewards. And so you might say, well, that's a gimmick. But if you talk to people who use that app and they explain how that changed their life, that is inspiring for others to see. So that's one of my dreams. There, I don't think I'm on track to reach that goal. So that's where I'm behind. On the other hand, the dream was, well, to have a third book out. It just got released 3 weeks ago. So now it's the time that people started to read it. And I think it's Gail Snyder's, who was on
yes.
your show in the past
Yeah.
and who was one of the first people who read it, that I'm on your show. So thanks to Gail, thanks to you again. So that's the biggest mission for 2025, trying to spread the word, trying to inspire people that so much can be done, that the things are easy to be done, and that once there's something clicking in your mind, you are on a path really to become epic. And if I may give one super simple suggestion, and we tackled a few things already, but sometimes people say to other people, "Yeah, you seem to be lucky all the time. How does that come?" And people did study lucky people. They do 3 things almost in a common fashion. Yeah? The first thing, I'm waiting in line to take a train or a plane. The majority of people watch their smartphone, really. True, they watch the screen. I
Yes.
go to you, talk to you, I say, well, I'm going to Zurich. Where are you going to? You might find me a freak, but the chance is low. I guess you will say, well, oh, I'm Karen. I'm flying to Melbourne. And we start talking. And maybe you become my future publisher, huh? My podcast host, my whatever, my boss. So I've taken the risk to dare to talk to you. Rule number one, take risk. Second, I interview with you and you don't hire me. So I failed, right? No, I sent you a letter thanking you, Karen, that I could interview with you. That letter you'll probably never forget. Maybe in 3 years you might need me. So I turned my failure into something you remember me for, right? And the
Yeah.
third thing, super obvious, but the majority of people, and that's a very bad thing in Europe, they know something, they keep that for themselves. Well,
Mm.
don't do that. Expand, tell what you know to others, share that with others,
Yeah.
because it comes back, and it's paying it forward. And that's why, making the link to I suggest people to start playing with things. For instance, 2 years ago, when AI became a thing for a lot of people, and Gen AI, ChatGPT, we founded a number of super simple WhatsApp groups with doctors who said, well, AI, no, 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 not in healthcare. But now we're 2 years later, and these doctors, they dared to start using things. They failed sometimes. They even mentioned what failed, what worked. They motivated others to start as well. And that was bottom down, of bottom up, starting to learn people to share, to deal with
Mm.
failure, and to deal with success. Well, that is something I would like to advise to every single listener to this podcast. Try, for instance, with your 5 best friends to start a little WhatsApp group on a topic using AI in the kitchen, whatever, or using AI in the car, whatever. And you've post the thing you just learned about this podcast, that there is an app, Healthy Chef, which can I use to make a picture of the inside of my fridge and to learn to cook healthy. Well, you share that to your 4 friends which haven't listened to the podcast, and one of these 4 might say, oh yeah, I've used that, didn't like it, I have something better. And all of a sudden, you have conversation and you
Mm.
start to build on something which is esoterical and far away. You start to build experience. And I think that's the best we can do. Show people that being curious, learning, gives them the best way to deal with change. And that's the only constant of the future. And that's why Epic describes how doing a few things in my daily life, empowered with tech, empowered with art and creativity, helps me to become really the version which at the end of my life says, well, wow, I got the maximum out of it.
Thank you. I mean, that's great advice, and I really appreciate it. But speaking of advice, if you could go back to the beginning of your career and give yourself any advice based on what you know now, what advice would you give to yourself?
Yeah, one super clear, what I regretted most is that I've never got mentors around me when I was young. I thought, well,
Mm.
I can do it all myself. No, you cannot do it all yourself, not at all. And I am, on one hand, I was fortunate to do good in school, to find a nice place to make my PhD, and to find fantastic spots at Harvard to work, and to find fantastic spots to build companies. But if I look back in hindsight, I think things could have been done better and faster and more efficient, having the right people around me. And maybe mentorship was not something people advised 35, 40 years ago, but it's something I would advise to people now. Try to find the people which are willing to help. The majority of people are willing to help, and they are this way paying it forward themselves. And so, incidentally, I became part of a team of people here in Belgium. I mean, I'm the youngest, and the others are 10 years older. It's called Turbium. And it's founded by someone who said, well, people, when they reach something like 65, they have to leave their job for some reason. By 65, that's the new 35, right? So, why should people leave their job because we have an old fashioned pension plan? And so Terbium brings former CEOs of big companies together, which will try to help the next generation of people to, well, develop, but also it will help showing people their second life. And their
Mm.
second life is something fascinating. Instead of having to finish working at 65, if 90 is the new 65, that's what we're going to have. Well, still have 25 fantastic years ahead. So, what I'm going to do with these 25 years, for a lot of people which have been so much focused on their work, all of a sudden they realize when they retire, well, what should we do with our work? They're living with their partner, is kind of recalibrating. They don't have a hobby. They always were important. They had money, they had status. Now they have to do something different. So dealing with your second life is something which is a thing. And so I was asked, I'm a bit younger, to help them showing what can be done with regard to staying healthy. And so your question was, what advice do you give? That was the question, huh? Which advice?
What advice would you give to your younger self?
To the younger
beginning of
self is surround yourself with mentors which help you to, well, it's not just to avoid mistakes, but to find and discover the things you don't have the time for to explore yourself. So make kind of a fortress of mentorship around you. That's what I would advise. Yeah.
Excellent advice. And I think that brings us to the end of our discussion. But do you have any final words to share before we wrap up?
Yeah. So what I hope that I have left to people that looking to the world with curious eyes, with the question, what can I do to provide someone in my environment, my parents, my kids, my colleague, my boss, my coworker, something he or she didn't realize he could get, because that will make people take the experience they remember they have received via you. That is what makes us human. And so I would like to send people home with the idea, how will you delight someone tomorrow? Because the delight you bring to others makes you epic.
Oh, beautiful words to end on. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
advice and wonderful words. And thank you to everyone for watching. And we'll see you. We're not back next month, but the month after for our next episode of Kokoon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.